experience. Oh God.
Hello. We are now live. Thanks for joining us, anyone. This is our weekly Big Man We Dram Live. This week, I'm also joined by our executive producer, Brittany Curran, who is running for her life. But our special guest this week is Blair Bowman, who is a friend of the film, big contributor to the film, whiskey writer. And Blair, I'll let you introduce yourself. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Well, I'm Blair Bowman, as you said. I'm a whiskey consultant and author and broker, and I live in Edinburgh. And yeah, I got to meet you guys when you were over here a couple of times, and then helped it with a bit with the sound and various aspects, kind of post-production, I guess. So yeah, it's lovely to be chatting to you guys again.
Well, thanks for joining us, and thanks for all your contributions to the film. It's funny.
It's been lovely. It's been lovely following the journey from you guys reaching out, say, hey, we're making a film. Do you want to come and have a chat? And it was quite an open chat. And then maybe I can't remember. It was maybe 6 months, maybe not even 6 months later. We had a follow up, and a lot of things had changed, and the story of the direction that you were taking and what you were producing. And then yeah, it's just evolved. It's been really lovely to see it.
Well, It's funny. I was thinking the other day, I was trying to remember who introduced us to you. And I honestly can't remember who it was. Most of the people I know how we tracked them down, but I can't remember. Do you remember who introduced us? I don't know.
No, I just remember getting an email from, I don't know who, but someone in your team just said, hey, we're filming in Edinburgh this date. Can you come along? And I'm afraid I can't remember. I could find it in my emails eventually, I guess.
I'm sure. My guess is it was Leslie Ann, who was our producer in Edinburgh, in Falkirk, actually. But and she was sort of helping set up a lot of the logistics and stuff at that stage. So, and I know I met you for the first time at Charlie McLean's house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that where the interviews were? The first round of interviews?
Yeah,
first
round. It was your last day of filming. You were just it was like the tail end of your production, and you were catching some stuff with Charlie. So it was easier rather than move location. It was easier just to use a different location in Charlie's house to shoot me. It just worked quite well, and I just live like literally 10 minutes away from Charlie's house. I didn't even
know that right now. I didn't know that you guys filmed there. That's cool.
Well, Charlie's house is like a set for a whiskey movie. There's every wall is a great has a backdrop that you would want.
Honestly,
a little fireplace,
I would be shocked if that weren't the case. I imagine he has like a little section like near his door that has like his articles on it, and other things of that nature, maybe some pipes.
Yeah.
Love Charlie.
You're not far off.
Yeah. Well, the second time we talked with you, it was at the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. That's when Brittany was with us that time. Yeah.
That place was so cool.
We always refer to that as the Blue Interview.
Was that later? Sorry, that was. I can't remember how later that was, but it was quite a bit later.
And it was like January.
It was,
right,
yeah. It was like February 2nd, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
The first time we interviewed you, it was November 3rd, and then the second time was, I believe, February 2nd or 3rd. Because if you remember, I went from Scotland back to LA, and then 6 days later, I went to Australia.
Yeah.
And then so that was this, and I remember that whole crazy couple of weeks was just. While we were doing that second shoot, we flew from California to the East Coast of the U.S. to Ireland, to London, to Glasgow, then to Iceland,
to Edinburgh,
to New York, to L.A., to Brisbane.
I did not do all of those stops.
Yeah, Edinburgh to Iceland. I flew. Yeah, you stayed.
Yeah. I stayed. And then at one point when you guys were going to Ireland, because it was only for one day, I think I just stayed in London and went to some castles instead and did not do any type of producing whatsoever. And I was a tourist. And then I jumped back on board and started working again. I had a really good schedule.
I just brought up, this is one of Blair's brilliant creations. This is the Tubemap of whiskey, which maybe I'll let Blair explain it better than I can.
Sure, I'll give the kind of the story how it came to be. So I was at a
that'd be great.
a hospitality industry event in Edinburgh and met a woman called Nikki Welch, who's a wine expert. And it's funny, we'd never crossed paths before. We'd probably been at the same big events, but we'd never bumped into each other. So we bumped into each other, and she showed me this beautiful map that she'd created called the Wine Tubemap. And we got talking, and as soon as I saw the Wine Tubemap, I immediately could see that there could be a use for creating a whiskey one and how that would translate into whiskey. And basically, a lot of the stuff she was talking about in wine, I was talking about in whiskey, making it accessible, having fun with it, not being so precious about it, and really focusing on flavor. So once we'd kind of had that initial kind of chat, basically she'd said that her publishers had also been asking her about creating kind of iterations of this concept. And it just so happened to be that, I bumped into her and I'm into whiskey. So we spent a summer basically developing this. She kind of had been through it once before, which was really helpful. So she kind of knew the process of making this kind of map. But I started off with, I think she said, go away and just kind of get lots of flavors of whiskey and put them into a spreadsheet. So I think the first spreadsheet I made had something like 500 whiskeys. And the whole point of this is to make it kind of accessible. So we whittled it down. We got down to, this is at 52 different stocks. Then once we had the 52, it was a matter of kind of creating natural kind of clusters of flavors. And then once we had those clusters of flavors, putting that flavor into a kind of line that kind of made sense. You go along the journey of that particular flavor cluster. And then as you got to the kind of terminus, the end of each of these lines gets more of that intensity of that particular flavor type. So it all happened really rapidly. From me meeting Nikki at an event, I think in March, we'd signed the contract, a couple months later with the publishers who have actually also published lots of Charlie McLean's books and Ian Buxton's books. And so they really know the kind of Scotland and whiskey scene, which was great. We spent a kind of month writing it, or I spent a month writing it. It really didn't take long to write, and then it was out by the World Whisky Day in the following year. So it was less than a 12-month process from start to finish.
That's really quick.
Yeah,
yeah,
it really is.
It's usually not how publishing works at all. That's a very good story.
Well, the thing is, the concept was, the format was there because Nikki had done the Wine Tubemap. So it was just a matter of kind of translating that into whiskey vocabulary, whiskey content. So, I mean, there wasn't a huge deal of research needed, but apart from really, we spent quite a bit of time doing kind of tasting research where we would line up all these bottles. So before we got to this visual that you can see now, we actually had it all on her living room floor with kind of like masking tape and bottles and post-it notes, and we kind of spend a lot of time tasting and then like readjusting and saying like, oh, this one needs to move here. No, these need to switch around this way. And but we got it pretty close from almost the kind of first and second draft of it. Interestingly, here's the thing that not many people know. The first draft of it actually had it rotated 90 degrees so that the island was in the bottom left corner. I don't know why, that was just the way that it happened in our brains. And then it was our designer that said, actually, it would be a lot easier when you print it. When you have the kind of the fold in the middle of a page, you always have this gutter, as they call it. And actually, it made more sense to have the gutter go down the middle than go through the island.
Yeah, I was looking to see. This is I have both editions of your book, and this is the first one. But it's the same in both. Yes,
it's the map. Yeah, so we didn't change the map when we did. So last July, and it was just amazing. Actually, it was all agreed pre-COVID to do a reprint. Thank goodness, because had it been agreed after COVID, it probably wouldn't have happened. But basically, we'd already done all the work for doing the kind of new updated version. But the difference in the updated version, the new edition, is that it has a lot more content about new distilleries that now have products, but they're so new that only a couple of them have actually released like an inaugural product, which may not be the house style of what they've become. So all these different stations on the map, even though each distillery makes, as we know, lots of different expressions, is based on the kind of the house style of that distillery, the kind of main core characteristic that runs through all of their expressions. So it may be in the next edition, once these inaugural releases are kind of out of the way and these new distilleries have core products, we'll then be able to start kind of dot them into this map. But we're also talking about potentially doing a digital version where you could kind of zoom in and out and you could see additional kind of mini stations that are kind of in between these core ones. So there's lots of other ideas at play.
That's really cool. And I really like how you've included, I was just talking with Brittany about this earlier, you've included not just Scotch whiskeys, but other whiskeys, because a lot of people will have other styles of whiskey before so it has a sort of natural stepping off point.
Yeah.
Of course, and we didn't want to make it exclusively Scotch whisky. As you can see, there's Japanese, there's Taiwanese, there's Indian, Irish, Canadian, obviously American, Swedish, Australian. We really do try and cover off the world of what of what whiskey is, because there's lots of different ways in whiskey.
Excuse me. This whole week, we've done a lot of content. I did some stuff earlier in the week. We had made a video with Charlie last year about I don't know if you saw it. It's this little sort of Charlie's 2-minute talk about. Well, what it is Charlie says, get a group of friends. Obviously, this was recorded pre-COVID. Get a group of friends, go to a bar that's reasonably well stocked. He said, try to get 3 friends, so there's 4 of you, and then choose 4 whiskeys, each from a different region of Scotland. But then share all 4 whiskeys, and then all agree on one whiskey, whether it's your favorite or just the most interesting, or maybe even your least favorite, but choose one of those. Then in the next round, get 4 whiskeys all from that same region.
Yeah.
And then do the same. And then if the bar has a good enough stock, then say you pick Islay, and then you pick Lafroig. Then if you can, you get 4 Lafroigs, and then you sort of keep, just like you were saying, if you make a digital version where you could zoom in, you sort of keep expanding.
Yeah.
Like a vector.
It's a great way to drink whiskey. Is actually always something I try and recommend to people. If you get into it, drink 2 whiskeys side by side, because when you come into something new, it's really hard to compare it to something if you're just comparing it against yourself. But as soon as you have some other point of reference, so be it whiskey 1 and whiskey 2, or even 3 and 4, you can then start to figure out, even if you can, if you're not at the stage where you've got the vocabulary to explain, oh, this one's more citrus or this one's more whatever, you can just detect, even without articulating it, that there's differences between A and B. And then you can go and explore and think, oh, I like this one more, so I'm going to go and explore this one a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's a really great, right now I'm in the middle of a little personal, I'll call it an experiment, but that's probably putting a bit too much polish on what it really is. It's just a gluttony of of trying. I haven't been able, I don't think I could do it all in one sitting unless I do tiny little pours, but doing the last 8 Octomore releases, all of the version 10 and all of the version 11 side by side. And the interesting thing to me in doing it is that they're both different years. They're both basically different vintages, but then each, the wood of each one has a different wood finish. There's the one I'm really interested in has always been the 0.3s, the Octomore of Octomore, where it's all single farm, and trying them. I wish if I could, but it's impossible without bottomless pockets to do all of the 0.3s throughout the back, 11 years now.
I was about to say, do you have all the Octomores or access to all of them? Because a lot of them are travel exclusives too, right? Some of them are?
Yes, I have 8. I have 8 different Octomores right now.
Cool.
And I don't have full bottles of them all, but I do have 8. I have all of the 10s and all of the 11s. And so I've been meaning to sit down. I have actually started it, but I haven't really done.
That's a fascinating.
They're all 60%.
Explore whiskey at a very intense level, being able to look at kind of granular level of how different these whiskies are, and there's not much. There's just subtle variations between each one. That's the nature of whiskies. It has all these different variations. I'm really lucky in my brokering work to get to taste kind of samples of parcels of casks that are still in casks. So there may be all the same whiskey. They were all filled on the exact same day into the same type of casks, literally within minutes of each other, but they all taste completely different. But on paper, they should be identical. But the nature of single casks, is that every cask is unique. And sometimes something magic happens with a particular cask that just kind of shoots it miles ahead of the other sibling cask.
Yeah. We did an event just the other night. One of the distilleries that's briefly featured in the film is the Australian distillery where Jim McEwen went. That's why we went to Australia. So they have it's 2 years in Australia for maturation, and their first whiskey is now whiskey as of this February. However, I didn't get to try this yet. They're supposedly going to send me some, but what they discovered one cask that they had that was still, as of the other day, 23 months old. was just miles ahead of the rest of the whiskey in maturation. There was just something magical about this cask. And so even though it's not legally whiskey yet, they were blown away by it.
Well, definitely.
And it was really frustrating sitting there watching them all drink it.
I know it was really frustrating. I was so jealous.
We have a question here. There's some questions that popped up, and before I want to do some trial runs on the Tubemap in a second, Blair. But we have a question here which I think is pretty interesting, so I'm going to bring it up on the screen if I can here. There you go. Can't help but notice that Bunnahabhain and Bruichladdich are stuck in the water. What's with that?
Yeah, so I should probably, I didn't really explain how the colors and the lines work, so I'll do that really briefly. But basically, so we have the heart line that cuts all the way through, and that gets its name from the heart of the distillation run. We have the easy loop, which is as it sounds. These are kind of easy, approachable flavors that are easy drinking, and that's the only one that's the same as in the Tubemap. There's an easy loop. The green one you can see there is called the intrepid line. So all of those flavors are intrepid and bold and innovative. The yellow line is the amber line. I was originally going to call it the ambrosial line, but it's actually called the amber line, so it's quite heathery and honey and all these kind of flavors. My favorite line, I think, is the decadent line. That's the dark blue one at the bottom. And as you get to the end of every one of these lines, you get more of that. So you get more decadent as you get towards the end of that. We then have the coastal line, which takes you up to Highland Park. You'll see there's a little footbridge between Macallan and Highland Park. Again, this is just to show there's a kind of synergy, there's a kind of connection going on here that you could cross from Macallan over to Highland Park. And then, so the island, before we get to the boats and the ferries, the island is called the Outliers Island, and that's where you get all the smokiness and the peatiness. And again, as you travel more north up the island, you get more of that intense smoke. But in order to kind of prepare you for the island, you have to have a whiskey on the ferry. So you can either get the ferry from Bushu and get on and have a Bunnahabhain, or you can get the ferry from Highland Park and go to Bruichladdich. But the idea is it's to kind of help you kind of graduate towards smoke. A lot of people say that they want to like, Lafroig and Ardbeg, but it's just too much for their palate when they're first kind of coming into drinking spirits. It's a big jump if you're used to drinking beer, but they would like to enjoy it, but they're just not ready yet. So it's just to kind of be almost a stepping stone. And also, if, as you guys have been to Islay, if you get the ferry, you've kind of got to have a whiskey when you're on the ferry. It's part of the journey, when you're getting there. It's all part of the pilgrimage, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
So so hopefully that helps answer that question.
Yeah, I think it does, especially if you're talking about Bruichladdich brand, not Port Charlotte or
exactly.
I was, I don't even know where Octomore would go on this map. Another island.
I mean, it would be
St. Kilda
on its own island. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. I mean, we do in each stage. So in each page of the book, each station has a page with a lot of detail, and it's very, fun and lighthearted. It's not meant to be intense and geeky. It's meant to be like practically helpful. But it also gives you kind of things to look out for, or recommendations, or things that are maybe unusual about those whiskies. So kind of special editions or things that you could maybe try above and beyond the core range.
I just realized Outlier Island is Lagavulin, Lafroig, and Ardbeg are right next to each other, and they're all next to each other in real life too.
Yeah, they are, and that's just a kind
Not
of
that order,
because a lot of people look at this and they say, "Oh, hang on, Talisker isn't anywhere near Bowmore or Leela in the real world." And I have to always say, "Well, no, this isn't the real world. This is a fictitious whiskey map. These are not based on geography. There's nothing geographical about this. It's purely based on flavor."
Yeah.
And I should tell people, we were only sharing the map right here, but I should tell people that the book has corresponding, like you said, Blair, like with each of these different whiskeys, there's corresponding pages that would go through the different styles. You can do a journey in the book, and the pages are actually color coded across the top to match the colors on the lines of the tube stations. Someone has asked here, I'll throw this one up on the screen too, which is there a reason for Monkey Shoulder being listed as a blend and a single?
Hang on, I need to find where it is again on the map. It's up at the top, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, Monkey Shoulder.
See, the map is a little cut off on my screen.
Yeah. Monkey Shoulder is a blended malt, and we didn't have any others that were blended malt. So I think that was the executive decision we made. Rather than make another icon, we put it down as a blend of single malts, if that makes sense. But well spotted. That person's
Sure.
obviously got good attention to detail.
Well, I think it's a great question too, and I figured that was why, that it is a blend and a malt, and it sort of is a good cusp. So the other day, before we're going to use Brittany as a little bit of a guinea pig in a moment, but the other day I put a thing in our Facebook group asking people what their stepping off point in their whiskey journey was, and we got some great answers. And it was really fun looking at it. And some people you just feel like, oh, they're lucky, but it could have backfired on them. A couple of people said Ugadal was their first whiskey, and I mean, I love Ugadal, but you could easily see someone being like, whoa. It's not an entry level whiskey for sure. But the one that seemed to be the most common one was Glenmorangie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just so approachable. It's just a great whiskey in itself. The original is delicious. It's very hard not to like it. Even if someone thinks they're not whiskey drinker, I think it's a great example of a whiskey that's really open and approachable, but has a lot of, we've got in the decadent line, it's got a lot of decadent flavors, especially across the range when you get into the more kind of cask finished, the 18, even, the signet, there's a lot of really decadent, rich flavors there, which would be, I think, to most people pretty approachable.
Years ago, a friend of mine was in London and he was staying at Claridge's, and they had the concierge there had a master class in whiskey for one day. My friend, who's in his 80s, this is the phrase. He said they brought in a guy who was in his mid hundreds, and he gave us this great class. But the one line that he said he always remembered from the class, he was going through different well-known single malts, and he said, Glenmorangie is the whiskey one drinks when one drinks before noon, because it's such an approachable whiskey. And it's funny because my friend David now to this day always has a couple of bottles of Glenmorangie in his house.
Before noon.
So yeah, I wanted to throw you a quick curveball, and before we try something with Brittany here, but this is not on the map. This is certainly not an entry level whiskey. And I was looking at the map this morning, and I was like, where would Edradour go on here? And I don't know. I mean, maybe the decadent line.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe down at this kind of convergence of the heart line, the decadent line, the amber line. I'm trying to remember if we put it. It did add a lot of other whiskey in an index at the back. So if you're looking at the map and you can't find, Edradour, for example, interesting, we've not got it in our additional index. We were quite tight on space, basically, on page count. So we had to kind of think about what brands, are most people going to be able to buy in the shops locally and those kind of things. But I think it would probably go down in the heartline, I think.
I told Brittany I was going to throw you a curveball. So I went to my whiskey collection.
A lot of people ask, what would this be? And, the thing is that's really surprised me is this has been out now for, I want to say 4 years, which can't be right, but I think it is 4 years since it first came out. Nobody's really challenged it. Like, no, this is completely subjective, 100% subjective and made up. With myself and Nikki, who assisted me. But yeah, I mean, nobody has aggressively argued, no, that's in the wrong place, or that would never be put there. Or I mean, I've not had any threats or messages from people in that vein at all. It's always been, oh, this was massively helpful. I used to always drink this one whiskey. I knew I really liked it. I would always order it in a bar. I'd always get given it as a gift, but I didn't know how it would relate in, the bigger picture of whiskey. And that's the intimidating and kind of daunting thing about whiskey. There's so much to choose from that. But if you know what you like, that's a great starting point. But then when you look at a shelf in a shop or in a bar, you're like, where does this thing that I know and relate to fit into this bigger, confusing, complex category? So it's been really lovely to help people on that kind of journey. And I'm seeing people actually on Clubhouse the other day. I noticed in somebody's bio, they said that they're working through the Blair Tubemap. Is what they'd called it, like in their descriptions of. And I was like, oh, that's very sweet. That they're like this thing doing this and all this kind of stuff about whiskey. And then it said, and I'm working my way through the Blair Tubemap. Is what he called it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was quite nice.
I love that.
I think you should sell tasting sets of each line.
Yeah, we
Because
did speak to a couple well-known retailers, but it was just a bit complex at the time when we were trying to launch. But I think you're right. There's definitely an appetite to build tasting sets around this kind of thing.
For sure.
it's funny because I about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, whenever I first got the book, I did a few of these with some friends. That's why I know it was more than a year ago, because I haven't done anything with friends in the past year. So, but we did a couple of these lines, and I remember I was like, oh no, I have no Glenkinchie. To be honest with you, I don't even know that I've ever tasted Glenkinchie.
Okay.
It's the only one that on the map that I'm 100% pretty sure I haven't. There's other ones I haven't had as much of, for sure. But I think it was the only one that was definitely popped out at me. I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I've never even had that. One of the things that I think that I wanted to do, and I talked to Brittany about, and this we can get into this now, is she had some ideas about if you start at X, let's go through this and talk about the flavors and how one leads to the other for a minute. So Brittany, if you want to pick one, you can we can go from there. What were the ones you and I talked about ahead of time, or go? You can
pick like my own whiskey journey from the beginning, right?
Or just something you see on the map that well, I mean, I know that you mentioned to me Lafroig.
Yeah. Well,
but
yeah.
Pick whatever you want.
Well, Lafroig's my favorite now, which of course I'm now probably giving away stuff. But the first whiskey that I ever tried that I really loved was an Irish whiskey. It was the Connemara whiskey. So I thought we could go backwards and go from where Brittany years ago started emotionally on her whiskey journey.
You've not traveled all that far, really.
I know.
It's smoky. So, if we were to add it to the map, it would definitely be, probably on the cusp of being on the island, or maybe near Hakushu, on the kind of Intrepid line. It's almost like you've kind of traveled, basically from where the kind of Hakushu area is, just kind of directly across the water. But it's nice that you obviously like those quite bold and quite smoky, but also a bit more complex. Like, it's not just pure smoke. There's a lot of other interesting kind of medicinal, earthy, kind of vegetal notes sometimes as well.
Yeah, because then I started noticing, like, when I would go to bars, and especially like when we were having a lot of tastings leading up to the Water of Life, leading up to filming the Water of Life, is when I did a lot more exploring of whiskey. By exploring, I of course mean drinking in massive amounts. And
for professional reasons.
Yeah, it was purely for scientific research. But because of that, I ended up having a lot of different types of whiskeys, which was because I obviously, like, back then I had some bottles, but this was such a great way at all of our tastings, like, to naturally try so many different ones. And like, of the ones that a lot of bars will have, I started to really gravitate towards the Lafroig quarter cask. And then from there, I just found out that I really loved Lafroig in general and just peated stuff. But
what's really funny is that's one of my favorite whiskeys, and that was my first whiskey.
Twinsies.
My first memorable. So my first, maybe when I was potentially not of age, whiskey that I remember.
One.
So yeah, because before that, interestingly, my family has connections to Orkney. So my dad had always had Highland Park in the house, and my granny used to come every Sunday for like a Sunday lunch, and my job was to go and make her, so what is now I would understand as being a highball, but for her it was just her drink, which was Canada Dry and Highland Park, and that was her drink, and I had to make it, and I learned to make it correctly. So I was like 10 or 12, whether making this what I call a highball now. So that was just kind of something, but so I'd always been aware of like the aromas and smells of it, but I had maybe been given a chance to try it and thought, oh, it's disgusting as a kid. But yeah, so then I remember going on a camping trip with my dad when I was maybe 14 or 15, and he'd brought a hip flask of Highland Park, and I remember thinking that was horrendous when I tried that. But then it was when I was at this kind of it was a kind of like going away party when we were at the end of our high school, before we were kind of going off to go to university and stuff. I remember somebody brought a bottle of the Four Quarts to this party, and it just is such like a it was such a bright green color, such a
Yeah.
bold, simple label, and compared to Smirnoffs and everything else that you imagine on the table at house party, it just stood out.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I'll try some of this, and it just it was really one of these moments, and I think a lot of people have a moment in their kind of whiskey journey where I was like, what the hell is this? And I couldn't tell if I loved it or if I hated it, but just something sparked in me that was like, I have to figure out more about this. Like, I know this is a whiskey. I know that in Scotland we make whiskey, but why does this taste this way? Like, why? It was just so almost perplexing to me as a underage drinker, to figure out why it would taste like that. And that was where I think the bug came from.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember I was at the oh my God, why do I always forget the name of it every single time? At the Lost Property Bar in Hollywood. It's like right off of Hollywood Boulevard. And we had one of our tastings there. And yeah, I remember having the quarter cask there for the first time. And then I was like, oh, I really love this.
Yeah.
There's something about it that I really, really love a lot. And I'll never forget.
Yeah. It's so funny that your gateway in was through quarter cask as well.
I know, that's so funny.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Because the 10, I do still really like the 10, but it's just there's something, there's that extra edge of woody funk, because of the quarter cask, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny what you said about when you tried it when you were younger for the first time, and that oh, there's something about this, and how do I feel? That's kind of how I felt the very first time I tried whiskey ever, and I don't remember what it was. It was a friend of mine gave me a little glass and or a dram. I don't remember what it was in, and I just remember drinking it and thinking to myself oh, I just like the sensation of this. I remember feeling, also, I mean, Greg knows, Greg known me since I was 14. I was a huge prude that didn't have any fun or drink anything or do anything cool ever. And so when I had my first sip of whiskey, I think I was 23 or 22 or something. And I just remember feeling the liquid and then feeling heat go out to my ears. And I was like, ooh, this is lovely. And I barely drunk anything at that point. And I loved the whole weird sensation of it. And it was really strong because I didn't drink anything because, I lived a bland life. I'm making myself sound way less cool. I mean, I'm not that cool, but I'm making myself sound worse. But yeah, I just remember thinking how do I feel about this? But I know I like the way it feels and the sensation, and I like the taste too. But I just remember the whole sensorial experience.
Do you think it was a Scotch, or do you think it was a bourbon at that experience?
That's a good question. I think it was a Scotch, but I don't know if my memory has just made it that way because I drink. I could ask my friend. I mean, I don't know if he'll remember.
I probably won't remember either. But it's just, I wondered just if there was that sweetness of Daniels or Jim Beam or whatever, best as it could have been, something a bit more smoky and intense.
Gosh, I want to say it was smoky, but just because of the sensation that I remember. I could be wrong. But yeah, it wasn't until a couple years later when I had the Connemara on St. Patrick's Day, because James, my fiance that and also the composer of the film, he had us do a little whiskey tasting with some friends. And then the last whiskey of the night was Connemara. And that's when I was like, yes, this is my jam. Yeah. And then
I think the first whiskey I ever tried was a Canadian whiskey.
Really?
And my parents, when I was a kid, my parents went on a cruise, and everyone on the cruise, they were given some collectible bottle from the cruise, and I'm pretty sure it was a Canadian whiskey. I don't remember. I remember the bottle was black. It looked like a cannonball. It was an opaque bottle, but I'm sure I stole some of that and tasted it as a teen. But the first whiskey I took that I drank by choice and took seriously, and was at the Bon Accord, and it was a 12-year-old Glenlivet.
Nice.
I don't think I tried Lafroig for years after that. I lived in Glasgow, so at the time, to be honest, at the time I mostly just drank Guinness. The student union had pints for 99p, so that was too good to pass up. So, but
Guinness is so much better in the UK.
But eventually,
Ireland.
Yeah,
it tastes better over
in
the
UK.
United States. Sorry.
Look, you want to know something deeply irresponsible?
Yes.
I was an exchange student, and what we had paid the university in the U.S., we had paid for room and board. But then when I got to Glasgow, I went to Glasgow, Caledonia, and they didn't have room and board. And so they just basically had to kind of wing it and find us a place to live, which they did. We stayed with all these students from culinary school. So like my roommates were all chef students.
As you're bored.
But then what they did is they gave us like a food allowance every week, which was they did. That was the best food we ate. But they gave us a food allowance every week that was, I forget how low, but like really, really too low. It was like 12 pounds a week or something. It was really very little money. And I would just spend it in the student union on 12 pints of Guinness over the course of 2 or 3 years.
I thought you meant they would give it to you.
They would literally give us
a voucher or something. Wow.
Nope.
I mean, what did these people going to do with
once a week?
Yeah.
Once a week, we'd go and we'd get a stack of cash. And
wow. Oh my God. When I went to UCLA, I got a meal pass, and you had to use it. It only existed
not
within the cafeterias.
Yeah.
Which had no alcohol in them.
Yeah. Well, this was, luckily, like I said, my roommate, Ian, was a chef student. So I would come home and he would have made this amazing stew, so I could still eat and I could just waste money on Guinness. But I did introduce myself to Glenlivet at the time. And I think I'm almost certain it was my 30th birthday when I tried Laphroaig for the first time. My friend JP, who Brittany knows, JP gave me a bottle of Laphroaig for my 30th birthday. And I did a whole little video that I've never edited and put online yet about how you may not remember your first whiskey, but you always remember your first Laphroaig. And
that's a good catchphrase.
Well, it's my wife's favorite Scotch as well. Which is funny because she doesn't like smoky foods. I like smoked meats and smoked cheeses and stuff. She doesn't, but she likes Laphroaig.
I didn't know that was Megan's favorite. I like Megan even more now.
I think we probably have about, give or take, 100 bottles of whiskey in our cabinet, and 99 of them are mine, and one of them is her bottle of Laphroaig. And I have other bottles of my own Laphroaig, but she has a lot of. She has a couple bottles of gin, and she likes gin, and she likes wine.
We have so much Scotch, which I like, and James kind of likes Scotch. Like he likes a few Scotches, but nowhere close to me. But because of doing the film, and then people, always think that we both love Scotch, which again, James likes Scotch, but not like me. So we both get gifted Scotch, which is lovely. So we have like mostly Scotch and then like a couple bourbons, which is actually what he prefers. And so, yeah, the whole liquor cabinet is pretty much for me. And then there's like a little slice for James, and it just kind of happened that way. So it's just so disappointing. And then we have a wine fridge too. We both like the same red wine. So.
I want to go down this Laphroaig line for a moment if we can, but I want to actually, we have a question someone has asked that I'd like to put up and ask here. Benriach, Glendronach, and Glenglassaugh all appear to be missing. Which lines would they have been on?
Hey, it's a great question.
Keith.
We had to be quite pragmatic about how many we fit on. As I said, when we started the development of it, there were 500 stations, which doesn't help someone when trying to get into whiskey. So we had to, unfortunately, kind of skim a few off. So I'm just going to check where we will have had them in the additional index. Yes, so we've got Glendronach on the Decadent. We've got Benriach on the Amber.
Sherry would finish. Yeah, that's where I would have put that too.
We've not listed Glenglassaugh in this. I probably would put it around the kind of Heart or Amber line as well. Glenglastaugh's pretty fresh and fruity, and it's got that kind of thing going to. Obviously, this is me talking at top level, about the kind of, as I've said, the house style of these malts. There's obviously subtle, nuanced kind of differences between each expression, but that's probably my gut feeling of where they would sit.
Can I ask? Actually, I have a question. Because I really love Belvini, and one of my favorite expressions of theirs is the 14-year Caribbean cask one. It's 14-year, right? That's the one, or is it just Caribbean?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
I love
14.
that one. Okay, so would I, like, for instance, if I wanted to go out from there, I would go out from the rumwood, or I don't know, would I go out from the rumwood?
Yeah, exactly. So that was the reason, because there's quite a few interesting things like this. So as you see, we've got rumwood finish, portwood finish, and sherrywood finish. Because finishing is such a part of it, and even virgin wood as well. Rather than make those a station that's a distillery, we've made it as a finish, so that you use that as your gateway to then think, oh, well, if I like this Balvenie rum finish, I'm probably going to like the Aphelion, I'm probably going to like the Valvlet. So that was the reason we took that decision to put some of these as finishes as well.
I
Or
love
even
that.
sometimes a whole type. So, I mean, we could have broken down Kentucky straight bourbon a lot more, but without being mean or unfair to bourbon at all, there's quite a lot of very subtle differences between bourbon. But as a category, there's a lot of similarities compared to when some of these polarized Lafroigs and Glendronachs and whatever. So that was why in some instances we've made a whole station as a type of whiskey. In that example being, Kentucky straight bourbon or single pot still Irish whiskey or grain whiskey.
I love that because I'm just thinking about the Balvenie. Wait, is it? This is so sad. I can't believe. Is it Balvenie or Balvenie?
Balvenie.
Okay. Oh my
Balvenie.
God, so embarrassing because I know people
That's
from
okay.
there. Made a
Go
movie
ahead.
about it. I think I learned it wrong years ago, and it just really got stuck in my head. Balvenie. Anyways, so yeah, with the Balvenie Caribbean cask, which I absolutely love, and I kind of bought on a whim because I like Pirates of the Caribbean, and I bought it, and I was like, holy shit, or whatever. I can swear, it's YouTube. I was like, this is
You
so.
can swear.
Yeah, I know it's
Okay.
true. It's your show. I can absolutely it goes along. But I loved it so much, and yeah, looking at the map, knowing what I now know about whiskey, which is still not a lot, but more than nothing. If I was to have the Caribbean cask and to go out from the Balvenie spot, yeah, that wouldn't bring me to similar things. So I love that there's the rumwood finish section because when I first
as well as
noticed
the
that,
Balvenie station. Yeah,
exactly. Because then I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
wait, I actually think rumwood finish would be more similar to the Balvenie Caribbean cask, and then I can find things similar to that specific one. And then of course Balvenie in general is a whole other lovely thing. But that's
I mean, you
cool.
can see
Now
how
I'm gonna
it's
try all
quite
those.
complex, to get our heads around it. And I mean, there's quite a lot of bits that are quite meta, even the connection between Sullivan's Cove and Dalwhinnie. So you can see how the lines kind of align with one another. So there is even kind of a theory beyond the theory that that there's a kind of connection there that you could, in the same way in London, for example, or in a city with a metro map, you're sometimes faster going above ground and then walking across. Sometimes it's faster to do that rather than go all the way through the network.
Yeah.
So that's the reason it kind of curves like that. And the same with lots of the other ones, the way that they just align. There was a kind of thinking about the same way the coastal line kind of takes its curve up away towards the coast. There was a thinking about why we've done that the way that we have.
I love it. Now
That's
I want to
great.
try all of it.
I don't think I ever grokked that before.
I mean, I
I've
guess we didn't
certainly
really
looked at it. I've
explain
done a
it
lot of
anywhere as such, but there's a reason and logic behind every decision we made in terms of the placements of stuff. It's the same with the triangulation of going to Glenrothes from both Glenlivet and Glenfiddich. There's a reason that we've done all these different things.
I think so many. I really liked it. I think that there's right in the middle there. There's three whiskeys that are so common. It's just. I mean, a big part of it is they're the biggest brands there are. The Glenfiddich, Glenlivet, Glenmorangie. There are so many people that's just what you're. If you're going to be in an airport lounge and they're going to have one single malt, it's going to be one of those three single malts.
Sure.
So the first
I have a cousin who. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the first time I tried a Canadian whiskey, talking about airport lounges, and you talking about trying it on a cruise ship was on an airplane because I remember I asked for. I think they only had. I was on Air Canada, so it also makes a lot of sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it kind of checks out. But I remember they had a Canadian whiskey and then something else. But I was like, I'll try the Canadian whiskey. I can't remember what it was.
I'm going to pour a whiskey now because we've been speaking so much about whiskey, and it's 10 here in the UK. So I'm going to pour a Ben Roma 10, which is one of my all-time favorites. This is actually the tail end of the old labeling. They've redone all their packaging recently, but I've got a bottle of that ready to replace this one as soon as this one empties.
I mean, you should. It is.
I have a bottle of that too.
I'm drinking
and
coffee.
It's in similar. I have a bottle of that exact same, the old 10, and it's in the same kind of state where It's on its last legs right now.
I'm drinking from my
nice.
golden Glencairn.
I was gonna say how fun.
I don't have I have a Cobalt
Cheers.
one, and I don't have it with me. Here, let me pour a dram. I'm gonna. You know what?
Greg's like, oh no, I have to pour a dram now.
I brought I have a Glenlivet 12-year-old, and I'm gonna. Since we're talking about where it all began, I'm gonna go back there.
I'm outside.
So
I'm like, go inside and get one.
I think we're going to wrap up in a minute, Britt. But go if you need.
No.
I'm
strong in a different way, so it's all good.
I mentioned my friend a minute ago. I mentioned my friend who got me my first Lefroy, and he has now commented on something, which it's not a question, it's just a comment, but I thought it was kind of funny. There you go. I can't help but attach landmarks to the different tube stops. Stroll the docks of Jura, marvel at the 60s era council estates of Dalwhinnie.
That's amazing.
That's a brilliant image. I haven't even, if anyone wants to do any fan art, then, go ahead.
I love that.
That's a really nice idea. I like that a
lot. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Slange.
All right. Cheers again. Slange.
I couldn't tell you the last time I had this Glenlivet 12-year-old. Oh, I could tell you. It was in an airport lounge.
And now I'm talking about it. It's just getting worse and worse. This is terrible.
So, I think that I know we got to wrap this up. And every week I say it's going to be 30 to 40 minutes, and we've never come in under 45, which is cool because there's no one, no one's going to put a shepherd's crook around my neck and yank me off camera. But I think we've done a really good job of explaining this. I also think I'm having audio problems right now. Are you guys hearing that, or is it just me?
I can hear you.
I think you're right.
No. Oh, now you guys are breaking up too.
Oh.
I can hear Blair. I can hear you, Blair.
Before we wrap up, can I do a shout out for the World Whisky Day weekend?
Please.
Yeah.
Which I think you guys have spoken to Eric.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead again. Sorry.
Okay. The World Whisky Day weekend. So from the 14th, 15th, and 16th of May, with the 15th being World Whisky Day, we're doing a whole series of virtual events. You can get an Access All Areas pass. Now, I don't fully understand it, but there's some sort of very clever technology. It means you can go into different rooms that are going on, almost like a conference. So you can go into one room and hear a panel discussion about something, and then go into a tasting room that's going over here, and you can get your tasting kit. So there's all these different things happening. It should work with most, I think we've timed it, it should work fine with the US time zones. Maybe it's just a little bit early for you guys, but it's the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We've done it for a few times now. We've done this thing we call the Big Fat Whiskey Quiz. So we're doing a whiskey quiz. So on the Friday, we're doing an entry-level version. And then on the Saturday, we're calling it the cast strength version. So it's going to be super tough, super geeky, but you can get teamed together on Zoom and take part in the quiz. And amazingly, I still can't really believe it. This is going to be the 10th year of World Whisky Day. I really it blows my mind a little bit now that it's 10 years old. I feel like it's kind of grown up and it's off to elementary school, and it's up on its own because it's now 10 years old. But yeah, so that's happening, mate.
Wait, so you really did start it when you were of legal drinking age?
Yeah, I was 21 when I bought the domain name.
That's a good way to ring in your drinking years by, founding
I
that
could already
day.
drink for 3 years at that time. We can drink at 18 in the UK. So I've been drinking. I'd had a couple of years under my belt of drinking before I purchased that domain name. I
forgot that, the puritanical Americans have a different drinking age.
When I was in high school.
Sorry,
go ahead, Britt.
No, before, because I love hearing your high school stories more than anything. Is there a link or a website people should go to?
Go to worldwhiskeyday.com. You can see all the details. Tickets went live yesterday. And you can purchase your access.
Not an EY, just for people listening.
Yeah, I think it should auto direct, but spell it the Scotch whiskey way. So worldwhiskey with a Y day.com.
Cool. Awesome. Anyways, Greg, sorry.
Hold on. No, I will. Here, I'll do this.
Greg and I did the Big Fat Whiskey quiz last year from our respective
there
homes.
we go.
Oh, cool, fancy.
There
it is.
Cool. So yeah, we're doing that again this year, virtually.
Cool.
Well, we spoke with Eric, and I believe we don't have details worked out yet, but I believe we're actually going to do something with the film in relation to the Weekender.
Nice. I'm happy to hear that.
And you probably were a little busy to notice such a thing, but last year during the whiskey quiz, we had put together a team of the film, and every member of the team except myself and Brittany slept in because it was early in the morning here. We're the only two who showed up, and all we did was just get our asses kicked.
It was tough. Yeah, it was very key. So that's why this year we're doing an easy version or a kind of entry level version that everyone can join in, and then we're doing this strength version on the Saturday.
I felt so confident going into it, and also it was kind of at the beginning of the pandemic last year, and it was one of the first virtual I was doing. So I was really excited. I was extra excited about it. And I remember waking up in the morning, and me and Greg were the only two that showed up, and we were on our respective computers 10 miles away or however far away we live. I don't know. I think of space and time in Los Angeles, not in space, as does everybody. And yeah, I remember being pretty cocky going in because I was like, I've produced a whiskey documentary. I know a thing or two.
Yeah, no, this was another. Yeah, we do it really for the. It all came about because we've done it in person. We've done them every year for the past maybe 3 years, and it's really for the whiskey trade. So companies would buy a team ticket. So Diageo would have a team, and Edrington would have a team, and whiskey bars and groups of friends and whatever all take a team, and it became really competitive. Really, really competitive, and people took it so seriously that there was absolute silence in the room when we're reading out the questions. It was so intense. So anyway, when the pandemic happened, we just thought, we just had a couple of weeks really to arrange it. But I'm glad that we did, because it was a nice thing for people to get stuck into, and it'd be just a bit of a distraction from what was a really strange time.
Yeah, even though I wasn't as smart as I thought I was, which was a sad moment for me, it was really fun.
Good.
Blair, have you ever been on Aquavitae, Roy Duff's podcast?
Well, interestingly, for World Whiskey Day a couple of years back, I was between events. So normally I'm just pinging around lots of events. And that year we'd done an event in Edinburgh, and I was actually traveling to Kuala Lumpur the next day to do a special World Whiskey Day event. And I remember I was in the taxi from one event to another on my iPhone. On his, he was doing a special around the world, kind of 24-hour special live stream where he was passing, I think, the torch on to someone else, and I managed to kind of jump in for a little bit of that in the back of a taxi. But I was very fatigued because I've been running around all over the place and just kind of said Happy World Whiskey Day, and then left.
Well, the reason I ask is back in January, I was a guest on his podcast, and he asks people if they want to stick around at the end and do. They have a trivia quiz, a 10 question quiz every week, and everybody can compete.
Get asked that.
Well, this may be new. I believe this is new just since the pandemic, to be honest with you. But so there's, but one of the other guests was Alex Bruce, and he stuck around, and there were other people who were really serious people in the whiskey world, and I'm telling you, this isn't false humility. It was pure luck. After the first 3 questions, I was the only person to have gotten all 3 right. Nice. And I was like, yeah. And then at the end of it, I think I had 3 out of 10. It was just, it was absolutely pure luck.
You got lucky.
Started really strong.
The one that threw everyone off the question was, what is the highest elevation distillery in Scotland?
No, this is
it's a trick question, I'll tell you that.
Argumented a lot. So the answer that everyone will say is Dalwhinnie, but it's not.
Yes.
It's no. This is right.
What is it, Blair?
I want to say, is it Tamnavulin? No.
Bravel.
Bravel. Yeah, it is Bravel. Yeah.
Good.
I knew that it wasn't, but everyone always quotes it being Dalwhinnie.
That's the Dalwhinnie bottle says it is, but they word it really crafty. It's the highest elevation distillery you can visit, because Bravel doesn't have a public face.
Yeah, it's not open. Yeah.
That's
so.
What?
If you read
So-
if you read a bottle of Dalwhinnie, it's worded in such a way. I think I have one, but it's in another room. They word it in such a way where it's like you can visit the highest distillery in Scotland, and yes, you can visit. But it's
it's open to the public. Yeah,
but so that was
very tricky of them.
That's a trick question.
That one gave me. But it was like one of those. It was like one of those Formula One races where, like, right off the start, there's a crash and it wrecks all of the favorites. So there's a guy who's not going to win, who's suddenly out in front, but then he still doesn't win. He just said that.
It reminds me of when I started co-ed adult rec league soccer or football back like 10 years ago, and I scored a goal on my first match. And never again. I did not score any other goal ever. I remember being in that match and being like, I still got it, because I played soccer when I was a little kid, and then I stopped. And I was like, ooh, my God, I can't believe I'm still kind of good at this. And then I wasn't.
I felt a bit like that. This is not really related, but I'll tell you anyway. I remember, so I've never done the lottery, just because I know the odds are completely stacked against me. But I remember thinking, so in the UK, I think it's changed now, but when I was younger, it was 16. You have to be 16 before you could buy a lottery. I remember on my 16th birthday thinking, this is it. If I buy a lottery ticket today, like, everything's in my favor. Like, my odds, for some reason, I just thought I was going to get it. And then I forgot. So then
so maybe you probably would have won, and then you blew it.
That's my thinking. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, I know it's late for you, Blair, and I really the only whiskey map that I'm aware of. So it was great.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great to chat with you guys.
This was fun.
Yeah. It was fun. And I've got to do some day drinking.
Yeah. Because I didn't drink during this. Now I'm like, I can't really justify it. So I'm going to have to wait for another few hours. But
Oh,
well.
And now I'm sort of like, well, I broke the seal. I may as well keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, anyway, Blair, I really hope we do something with World Whiskey Day. And I really think we're gonna. Like I said, we spoke with Eric last week, and I think it'll be fun.
It was Blair's birthday last week, so happy belated birthday to Blair.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, happy belated birthday.
March what? Was it?
March 21st, so my second lockdown birthday.
Cool.
Unfortunately.
Wait, what is it? What'd you say?
My second lockdown birthday.
Oh, I said cool, not hearing what you said. And then I was like, wait, I don't think. Cool.
My birthday's in 2 days, but because it's on Easter, I've informed my wife that as of 5 p.m. today, it's my birthday all weekend. I'm claiming the whole weekend, starting at 5 p.m. today.
Wait, I did know it was your birthday. I've been meaning to get you a present online. Oh God, I gotta do that now.
Don't get me a present. But anyway, thank you so much, Blair, and thanks everyone that tuned in. We had some great questions tonight. It was really fun, and I hope that everybody gets your book and takes a Tubemap tour. And please, if you do, write to us.
And Barnes and Nobles, and name any other decent bookshop, and you'll be able to get it from there.
Do you have
the oldest bookshop?
What?
Go ahead, Britt.
I was going to ask if Blair has a preferred bookseller that he likes people to buy it from.
I mean, sometimes, there's a lot of hate towards companies that begin with A and end in Zon. But if you've got, if you're happy to buy from them, then, you can buy from that company. It still sells copies of my books, so I can't really shun them too much. But I mean, it's nice if you can support an independent bookshop. A lot of them should have access to it. They can buy it through their distribution network. They can all, so even if they don't have it, you can place an order for it and they'll get it from your local bookstore. So it's available in the US.
I bought one of my copies. I bought the new one at Skylight Books here in my neighborhood in Los Angeles, and also I know Chevalier Books has it, but it is called The Pocket Guide to Whiskey. Here, allow me to. There you go. I changed the focus. So yeah, thanks very much, Blair and Brittany. And I really enjoyed talking to you as always. And thanks everyone else. Have a good Friday.
Thanks, guys.
Sounds good.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.